I'm inviting our main speaker or keynote speaker, one of the speakers. He says, he rang me a few weeks back and he asked me, what do you want me to speak about? And I said, trade union role in the world peace and justice. And he asked me, do you want me to speak, do you want me to be a funny or a serious? And I said, seriously funny. So can I invite Rodney Bickerstaffe to come and speak?
Thanks very much, Mushtaq. Good evening, everybody. Just good. And the ones at the back, can you hear me? Hard luck. Can I say I'm delighted to be here. And I have to say, Mushtaq, I did not know much about the Third World Solidarity Organisation, but I am reading up on it more and more. And I would start off with the miners and the Durham Gala. Some, by the way, call it Gala. Some call it Gala. I come from Yorkshire. Gala sounds sort of working class, you know what I mean? Gala sounds sort of Durhamish, doesn't it, you know? So,
it's Gala.
But it is Gala. You can call it what you want. You say Gala, I say anyway. I've been going for many, many years, certainly since I became a General Secretary in 1982. And of course, we went through all those troubles in 84, 85, and all the things that have been talked about. It really is a most wonderful day. If there's anything that I like about it, it's loyalty. Loyalty to a cause, never giving in. Never walking away from an idea or an ideal that you believe in. There's too much of people saying, you know, these are my principles, and if you don't like them, I've got a few others here, you know? The Durham Miners Gala, every year, not identical, it moves, it changes, it develops, but of course there are no mines now. You say, how can you have a Durham Miners Gala if there aren't any pits, if there are no workers from... Because what they've said is, look, we are loyal to our cause. Our cause wasn't just our industry. Our cause was our community. Our cause was our life. Our cause, as Dave said right at the beginning, was, you know, the sort of principles, the values that they believed in then and that they believe in now. So you'll see all those banners. And I'm delighted, back of my head, front of my head, I'm delighted to be on one of the... I'm just a bit upset by 1871 because, honestly, I may look it, but I was not there. Which reminds me, I was a General Secretary, and when I retired early. Well, you have to do it in a game like mine. I looked like this at 30 years of age, which is why people still say to me, you haven't changed, and absolutely right. It's just that I looked 70 when I was 30. Anyway. I was met by Jack Jones, some of you heard this, absolutely true, and he said, Rodney, will you come and work for the pensioners of the country, the National Pensioners Convention that Jack Jones of the T&G set up along with the Trade Union Congress in 1978. Many of you will remember Jack, know Jack, and I see some people nodding already. And he said, will you stand as president if I stand down? And I said, I'm not old enough, Jack. And he said, no, Rodney, but you look it. So I'll never forget Jack Jones. What am I talking about? Well, Dave told me I was going to be talking about the Durham Miners Gala. And I think, just in passing, before I move on to world peace, a much easier topic, of course, that I ought to say I see no reason at all why under a freshly bought banner headed Third World Solidarity you can't have all your people Mushtaq up there this year marching, not just on the side applauding. I think a banner with Third World Solidarity and 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 of your people, it would be... That would speak volumes. That would speak volumes. And you'd have to get a band of some description. Well, you wouldn't have to, but you might. Well, I'm sure you can hire one of the Durham brass bands or silver bands. But I would really say, I know it's only a short term away. If you can't do it this year, do it next year. And do it under that banner, A, because it will mean people say, what is this organisation? And it will make people out there learn about your organisation, about the values that you've got. But B, it will say something. I mean, the Durham Miners, they started off by saying that, you know, in days of old, it was a very British thing, the miners. It was obviously a masculine thing, but it was a very British thing too. But I've seen over the last 20 or 30 years, people from Canada, people from Australia, people from many parts of the world, South Africa, and I just think it would be a great idea if you were to add that to it. Now, trade unions and world peace, well, that's an easy one, isn't it? Trade unions are just people. I mean, Mrs. Thatcher, I'm sorry. I just like upsetting him. They tell me she's dead. Yeah. I spoke in Canada, absolutely true, and you might not like this, and I might offend people in the next 5 minutes. I don't care, because you're not inviting me again. I said in Canada that the day that Mrs. Thatcher dies, I want to be one of the stakeholders that make sure she doesn't come back. Because there is a very real worry, you know, that she will.
She's already here.
In fact, yeah. Some of you, by the way, have you been to the Bilderberg Hotel? Yeah? Well, some of you look quite rich. I'm not talking about the Durham lot, obviously. No. World peace. I just jotted down a few quick thoughts. I mean, and I would start off, and this might offend some people, I think we should stop Trident. I think we should stop Trident. And I know that there are people who will say, oh, no, Rodney, because, you know, as long as we've got that 4 Trident nuclear submarines, that we're safe against the world. You cannot have, if President Obama's right, and his argument about having less and less rifles and handguns in the United States will help, how much truer is it that if we get rid of all the nuclear weapons in the world, there will be less and less chance of that one day of something happening. So, I mean, and I know you mentioned Nye Bevan. I mean, Nye turned on a sixpence on that particular one, and he said, if you remember, don't sort of tie my hands, don't send me naked into the conference chamber. Yeah? Well, my own view is that, whether he was right or wrong then, that certainly now, the state of our economy and the state of our world, to be paying out 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 billion pounds on 4 nuclear submarines that we don't actually own and control ourselves is ludicrous. Every year, 25,000, give or take, old people, old Pakistani people, old Indian people, old English, Welsh, Scottish, you name it, in this country, die of cold-related illnesses before their time. And it need not happen. It needn't happen. 25,000. And we're supposed to be looking after people in this country. If you took the money out of the defence fund and looked after eating and heating and shelter and healthcare for those 25,000, you've only saved 25,000 lives. Over 10 years, you've only saved 250,000 lives. And when people say to me, well, old people, they've done the bit, you know, there are societies on this globe where older people are still respected, am I right? Yes. There, and many of you will know what I'm saying. They are looked after and respected, whatever their problems, whatever the issues. And for good or ill, we've lost so much of that. There was never a golden age where we thought older people were perfect and should be held up there. But at least it was a better time than we've got today. And when I hear, and I've been a member of the party, the Labour Party, and some of you may not be, and some of you may not like it, but I've been a member for nearly half a century, and I have to question all the policy developments where there is a question mark over universal benefits. Because not just across the world, but here, certainly in this country, there's so much that pushes us apart. Colour of our skin, obviously, makes us different. Our accents makes us different. Our education makes us different. Our religions, our dialects, there's so much that pushes us apart. And yet there is a welfare state here, built up over decades, in fact thought about for centuries, which says, I don't care how rich you are, you will get this state pension. And if you don't need this state pension, you're still going to get it, because there's a massive cost if we have to say, you don't have to get it because you're rich, but you do because you're poor. And secondly, because it was said not too many years ago by a famous academic that if you only have benefits and services for the poor, then you will end up with poor benefits and poor services. Richard Titmuss, yeah? And I believe that. So I honestly do feel that this opening of some of these universal benefits is a problem. I actually personally, you think I'm stupid, I haven't had a drink, honestly. I think there should be universal benefits considered right across the world. And that may be a dream. There are 7 billion people on this spinning planet. 7 billion. Again, give or take. But my view is we shouldn't have a situation where you can lay off unemployed men and women in country A because you found country C where men and women can be forced to be paid less. And that's what's happened over and over and over again. We've got lots to answer for with the colonial years, there's no doubt about it. I don't mean individually, and I don't necessarily mean even as a nation, and I think some of these apologies have question marks anyway. But I think we have to admit that the rape and the pillage and the carnage and the theft that was done over those empire years has resulted in so much pain and hardship across the continents of the earth that we should be ashamed. And when our Prime Minister, of whom I'm not a great fan, says, as you might guess, says something like we're one of the few countries in the world that is giving the 0.7% towards aid, you know, that's somehow wonderful. I mean, it's right and proper that we're doing it. But if you look back at some of the things that this British Empire did in those days, absolutely disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. The Mau Mau's, it's taken how long to say sorry to them, and small amounts of money going to them, all the ones that have died. So we're not a perfect society. People say to me, in Pakistan, look recently, you saw the factory and the health and safety. I say, what about England? 7 years ago, 18 Chinese cockle pickers on a beach in Lancashire drowned. They were on £1 a day. £1 a day. So when people talk to me about deregulation at home and allowing, well, we can cut back on health and safety, everybody knows what it's about, and we don't have to do anything abroad because they can look after themselves. Well, they can look after themselves when it's poor people being exploited in order for us to get Nike shoes or cheap T-shirts. That's all right. But when it comes to intervention as warriors, inverted commas, then so many here are slap happy. Let's go into Iraq. Let's go into Afghanistan. Let's do this, let's do that. As though somehow, not only were we still a major power, but that we were right and we were morally correct in doing these things. I tell you, I wasn't going to get on to Syria. I'm absolutely convinced in my own heart and my own mind we should not be putting arms into Syria on behalf of anybody. There will just be more carnage and more carnage. Of course, am I boring everybody to death? I probably am. Well, anybody, I thought I heard a stomach or two rumbling, but that could have been Davy Hopper.
Kashmir is a very important issue.
Kashmir, yeah.
Please, yeah. Don't forget that Kashmir is a core issue between India, Pakistan, and America. Please.
Well, no, it's absolutely true, and I haven't got all the answers to Kashmir, I'll tell you now. It is important, but it's not the only place. It's also the waters between Japan and China. I mean, if you think about it, there's nowhere in the planet. Why were we in the war in the Falklands? Was it for those 1,387 people there? Possibly. Was it because we had a megalomaniac in power? Possibly. Or was it that on the sea floor there is potentialities of oil and gas and heaven knows what? Possibly. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. All I'm saying is when people are talking about going to war, my question mark usually is not just about the idiot who's saying, follow me, we're going to rule the world. It's the person or persons who are saying, there's money to be made here. When I was a little boy, I was taught a poem. War leads to poverty, poverty to peace. Peace leads to plenty, then riches increase. Riches bring pride, and pride is war's ground. War leads to poverty, so goes the round. And I've always thought, I've always thought that war is economically related, you know? And what have we got? You see, you read the books. Anybody heard of or read The Spirit Level? I mean, the ideas aren't new. It's just that they put figures to it. I mean, what they generally said in the book is, look, the more equal society you've got, the happier the society. A socialist principle, much as you well know. But I say, what about the world? You know, as long as you've got people dying of starvation in this rich planet of ours, as long as you've got babies being thrown on sewage heaps because their parents just cannot afford to keep them, as long as you've got a situation where children are growing up twisted, their bodies all over the place because of malnourishment, and we're the 7th richest country in the world, here in the UK. And not 700 yards from here, nice hotel, isn't it? 700 yards from here, there's a food bank. You could reach it yourselves, any one of you, almost on your hands and knees within 7 or 8 minutes. St Pancras Church up on the corner, that's where it is. There's a food bank. Food bank here in Bloomsbury, rich Bloomsbury. I mean, it's ludicrous. It's just a matter of equality, which was something that was said on so many of the banners up there, not on this one, but it has things like that. Equality. They've been telling the tale since 1871, Davy. And a lot of them are very simple, basic truths. Like, you've got to help your neighbour up if they fall. That doesn't mean with guns or bombs. It means with aid. It means with education. Not in a patronising way, but in saying, yes, we did take rather a lot from you, didn't we? So it's about time you got some of it back. And what do? The last 50, 60 years of the welfare state, we met every dictator in the world, our governments. We shook hands with them, we drank wine with them, we ate with them, and we gave or sold them our military equipment. Correct? It's absolutely true. And yet we go into this country to get rid of a dictator because dictators are bad. It's the double think of some of the elite in this country. Migration ought to be mentioned in international terms. It's already been said by one or two other speakers. I mean, the one thing that I like about the United States entrance is that great big statue and the poem written in the 1880s, was it? 1885 or something, that more or less said, give me your poor, give me your, you know? Because they haven't done bad off it, have they? And I believe the mix is what makes a nation, and it's the mix that will make the globe. And I hope one day when the Treens come, or the Martians, or whoever the hell they are, they'll find a united world. Because I tell you what, if we don't all, and Tony Benn tells this sort of story about a boat, you know, if we don't all look after the boat together, the boat will sink. World climate, another thing to talk about. Perhaps not this evening. So, I mean, there is so much. You mentioned EDL. I'll mention UKIP. And I'll mention the BNP. And it's right that whenever times are hard, there will be a man or a woman who will stand up proudly and say, I am the answer. Come to me. I know the way forward. And they'll hold their hands like this and they'll stand proud. And there's too many people who are desperate, who are conned by this. And they want a hand in the night to see them through. And they're simple things. We've seen it before. We saw this on the continent. Somebody mentioned the Spanish Civil War. If people had listened to Jack Jones and others who fought in that Spanish Civil War on the side of the good guys, well, who knows, perhaps that last fascist war might not have taken place. So what do I say about world peace? I think it's a good thing. I think it can be achieved. It can't be achieved in our generation. There are too many wars going on already. But we can educate. We can talk to our sons and our daughters, our grandsons and our granddaughters. We can talk to our cousins. We can even talk to our aunts and uncles and grandparents, some of whom may not think the way I talk or you think. And we can say, one world, one humanity, and we'd like them all to come to the next Durham Miners Gala. Thanks very much.
Rodney, thank you very much. I think it was one of the best and good speech I have heard. I might have not heard a lot from you, but I have heard you some. And I am very thankful, I think,